Close your eyes and picture the classic Canadian dream. A brick bungalow in the suburbs, a hockey net in the driveway, and a sense of security that your hard work actually translates into equity. Now, open them to the reality of 2024. For most young Canadians, that dream has become a hallucination, a cruel joke told by a generation that bought their homes for the price of a used Honda Civic. You're working 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week, yet your bank balance feels like a leaking bucket. You look at the Loblaws receipt for 3 bags of groceries and realize it costs more than your parents' monthly mortgage payment in 1992. There is a visceral, gnawing pain in the pit of your stomach, a feeling that you're running on a treadmill that's being sped up by a central bank that doesn't know your name. But here is the shadow fact that no one in Ottawa wants to admit. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended for those who already own the dirt. We aren't just facing a housing shortage. We are witnessing the deliberate dismantling of the middle class. But why is the gap between your paycheck and a down payment growing by 6 figures every single year? The answer starts with a lie we've all been told since birth.
The lie is simple. Work hard, save your money, and you'll get ahead. But in Canada, the math has decoupled from reality. Let's talk about the shadow fact of the 1970s versus now. In 1975, the average Canadian home cost roughly 3 times the average household income. Today, in cities like Toronto or Vancouver, that ratio has ballooned to 12 or 15 times. You could live on instant noodles, cancel every streaming service, and never touch a drop of Starbucks, and you still wouldn't bridge the gap. The CRA takes its bite before you even see your check, and what's left is devoured by the big 3 telecom giants and the grocery oligopolies. You feel it every time you walk into a grocery store and see butter for $8. It's not just inflation. It's a systematic transfer of wealth from the young and working to the old and invested. You're being gaslit by headlines saying the market is cooling, while a 500-square-foot condo still lists for $700,000. The emotional toll is a quiet desperation, a realization that your degree and your career are no longer a ticket to stability. But if hard work isn't the key, what is? To understand that, we have to look at the invisible hand of the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada interest rate hikes were supposed to tame the beast of inflation, but for the aspiring homeowner, they were a double-edged sword that cut right through the heart. As rates climbed, your borrowing power evaporated faster than a puddle in a Chinook wind. Suddenly, the modest townhouse you are eyeing became $2,000 more expensive per month in interest alone. You're trapped in a renter's purgatory. You pay your landlord's mortgage, helping them build equity while you struggle to keep your TFSA from stagnating. The irony is suffocating. The very people who tell you to invest in your future are the ones hiking the cost of that future out of reach. You see the BOC governors speaking in cold, calculated terms about economic cooling, but they don't feel the heat of a family of 4 living in a 2-bedroom basement apartment in Brampton. They don't see the stress lines on the faces of people who realize they will be working until they're 80 just to afford a roof. It's a psychological warfare where the prize is a sense of belonging in your own country. And yet, there's a secret reason why prices refuse to drop significantly despite these high rates, and it involves a group of buyers you'll never meet face to face.
Enter the corporate landlord. While you're scraping together pennies and checking your credit score, multi-billion-dollar investment firms are buying up entire subdivisions before the foundations are even poured. To them, a home isn't a place to raise a family. It's an asset class with a predictable yield. They have access to capital you can't even dream of, and they don't care about the stress test. This is the shadow fact of the modern Canadian market. You aren't just competing with other families, you're competing with algorithmic trading bots and hedge funds. They want a nation of renters because renters are a source of recurring revenue. Every time a young Canadian gives up and signs a long-term lease, a shareholder somewhere gets a dividend. It feels like a betrayal of the Canadian social contract. We were told this was a land of opportunity, but it's becoming a land of feudalism, where the lords own the land and the serfs pay for the privilege of standing on it. You feel the visceral anger when you see a for lease sign on a house that's been empty for 6 months because the corporate owner is waiting for the perfect price. But wait, there's another factor. If the supply is so low, why are we growing faster than any other G7 nation? The math of Canadian immigration is a topic many are afraid to touch, but the reality is written in the tent cities popping up in public parks. We are bringing in over 1 million people a year into a country that only builds a fraction of the housing needed to house them. This isn't about xenophobia, it's about basic physics. You can't pour a gallon of water into a shot glass without a mess. The government uses high immigration to keep GDP numbers look healthy and to prevent a total collapse of the aging labor force, but they forgot to build the bedrooms. This creates a hyper-competitive environment where rent prices in the GTA and Vancouver skyrocket, making it impossible for anyone, newcomer or seventh-generation Canadian, to save for a down payment. You're caught in a pincer movement, stagnant wages on one side and an infinite pool of demand on the other. It's a recipe for social friction and deep, lasting resentment. You feel like a stranger in your own city because the landmarks you grew up with are being torn down for luxury condos you'll never afford. This leads us to the most painful realization of all. The bank of mom and dad is now the only way in, and if your parents didn't buy in 1980, you're essentially locked out of the castle.
The bank of mom and dad has become the single largest lender in the country, and that should terrify you. It means that social mobility in Canada is dead. We have transitioned from a meritocracy to an inheritocracy. If your parents have a HELOC on their detached home in Oakville, you might get that $100K gift for a down payment. If they don't, you're relegated to the permanent underclass of renters. This creates a visceral divide between friends. You see a colleague buy a house and you know deep down they didn't do it on their salary alone. The shadow fact here is that this intergenerational wealth transfer is actually fueling the fire, keeping prices high because there is always someone with gifted money ready to overbid you by $50,000. It's a cycle of inequality that is tearing the social fabric of Canada apart. You feel the bitterness at Sunday dinner when your parents talk about how they just worked hard to buy their house, oblivious to the fact that their house now costs 20 times their original salary, while yours hasn't doubled in 20 years. But there is a hidden cost to this gift money that no one talks about. It's the debt trap that's waiting to spring on the next generation.
The CRA is the silent partner in your failure. Think about the tax bite in Canada. You pay income tax, then you pay HST on everything you buy with what's left. If you manage to save a few dollars, the government is right there to tax the interest if it's outside a sheltered account. But the real shadow fact is bracket creep. As inflation pushes wages up slightly, you move into a higher tax bracket, but your purchasing power actually goes down. You're earning more dollars, but those dollars buy fewer bricks. The government is getting a stealth raise while you're getting squeezed. You look at your pay stub and see a third of your life's energy going to a system that can't even ensure you have a family doctor or an affordable place to live. The pain is visceral when you realize you are subsidizing a system that is actively making your primary goal, home ownership, harder to achieve. You start to wonder, why am I staying? Why am I playing a game where the rules are rigged against me? This is leading to a brain drain that Canada hasn't seen in decades. The best and brightest are looking at the border and seeing a way out. But before they leave, they fall into the doom spending trap.
When the goal of a home feels impossible, your psychology shifts. This is the doom spending phenomenon. If you'll never save the $200,000 needed for a down payment, why bother saving at all? Instead, you spend that money on micro-luxuries. You buy the expensive tech, you go on the trip to Europe, you eat at the trendy restaurants. It's a coping mechanism for the loss of the future. The emotional pain of being a failed adult in the eyes of society is too much to bear, so you mask it with consumerism. But this creates a shadow fact loop. The more you spend to feel better, the further the dream drifts away. You're caught in a cycle of instant gratification because the delayed gratification of a home has been stolen from you. You see it in the malls and the bistros, young Canadians living like they're rich while their net worth is zero or negative. It's a hollow existence, and deep down, you know it. Every luxury purchase is a tiny funeral for the life you thought you'd have. But what happens when the doom spending stops and the reality of aging in a rental market sets in? That's where the true horror of the Canadian housing crisis lies. The shadow fact of the rental market is that it's no longer a temporary stepping stone, it's a permanent cage. In Canada, we have some of the weakest tenant protections when it comes to rent evictions and own use evictions. You live with the constant low-level anxiety that a single email from your landlord could uproot your entire life. You can't paint the walls, you can't get a dog, and you can't truly put down roots. This lack of stability has a visceral impact on the birth rate. Young Canadians are giving up on having children because you can't raise a family in a 450 square foot glass box in the sky with a landlord who might kick you out next month. We are trading our future population for current real estate profits. The missing middle, those family-sized townhomes and 3-bedroom apartments, don't exist because developers make more money on tiny luxury studios for investors. You are being squeezed out of the gene pool by a spreadsheet. The emotional pain of choosing between a home and a child is a tragedy that will haunt Canada for 50 years. But why doesn't the government just build more? The answer is buried in a mountain of red tape and NIMBY politics.
NIMBYism, or not in my backyard, is the silent killer of the Canadian dream. Existing homeowners, the ones who saw their property values triple, are the most powerful voting bloc. They show up to city council meetings to fight against any density that might change the character of their neighborhood. What they really mean is they want to protect their windfall at your expense. The shadow fact is that zoning laws in most Canadian cities make it illegal to build anything other than a detached house or a massive skyscraper. There is no middle ground. This artificial scarcity keeps prices high and keeps you on the outside looking in. It's a generational war where one side has all the equity and the other has all the debt. You feel the visceral unfairness when you see a sea of single-family homes near a transit station while you're stuck in a 2-hour commute from the edge of the world just to find something affordable. The system is designed to protect the character of the neighborhood while destroying the character of the people living in it. But there's a new trend emerging. Canadians are simply leaving, not just the cities, but the country entirely.
The exodus is real. From the Alberta is Calling campaign to the thousands moving to the US or Southeast Asia, young Canadians are realizing that their loyalty to their homeland isn't being reciprocated. Why stay and pay 50% tax and $2 million for a fixer-upper when you can earn more and pay less elsewhere? This is the shadow fact that will hollow out our economy. We are exporting our talent. When a doctor, an engineer, or a tech worker leaves because they can't afford a house in the city they work in, the entire system weakens. You feel the visceral loss when your best friend moves to Calgary or Texas because they just want a backyard for their kids. It's a quiet tragedy, a slow-motion collapse of the community you thought you'd grow old with. Canada is becoming a place where you come to get an education and then leave to actually start a life. The Canadian dream is being rebranded as the Canadian departure. But for those who stay, the struggle turns inward. The mental health crisis linked to housing is a ticking time bomb that no one is talking about.
Let's talk about the shadow fact of the stress test. It was designed to protect the banks, not you. It ensures that if interest rates hit 8 or 9%, you won't default. But it also means that to buy a median-priced home, you need a household income that puts you in the top 5% of earners. Think about that. If you are a normal, hard-working person, a teacher, a nurse, a tradesperson, the system has officially categorized you as not worthy of owning land. The emotional pain of this rejection is profound. It's a slap in the face to the idea of a fair society. You're told to just save more, but how do you save more when the goalposts are attached to a rocket ship? The stress test has become a hope test, and most of us are failing. You see the BOC rates fluctuating and you realize your entire future is being decided by people in a boardroom who have never worried about a rent increase in their lives. The visceral feeling of being a passenger in your own life is exhausting. But what if the bubble never bursts? What if this is just the new, permanent reality of the Great Canadian Reset?
The bubble debate has been going on for 20 years. Every expert who predicted a crash in 2012, 2017, and 2021 was wrong. The shadow fact is that the Canadian government cannot afford for housing prices to drop. Real estate makes up nearly 10% of our GDP, more than in the US before the 2008 crash. If prices fall, the economy collapses, banks fail, and the tax base evaporates. The government will do everything in its power, 40-year mortgages, tax credits, increased immigration, to keep the bubble inflated. They are trapped, and they've trapped you with them. The visceral realization is that the people in charge are incentivized to keep your housing costs high. It's a conflict of interest on a national scale. You are the fuel for the fire. Your high rent and massive future mortgage are the only things keeping the Canadian economy growing. It's a parasitic relationship. You're not a citizen, you're a line item on a balance sheet. This leads to a sense of nihilism. If the game is rigged to never let the little guy win, why even play? This is why young Canadians are turning to high-risk investments like crypto or gambling. It's the only way they see to skip the line. Let's look at the shadow fact of the TFSA and RRSP. We are told these are the keys to wealth, but in a high inflation, high housing cost environment, they are like trying to put out a forest fire with a squirt gun. If you put the maximum into your TFSA every year, you might have enough for a down payment in 15 years. By then, that same house will cost double what it does now. The math simply doesn't work. The RRSP home buyers plan is a joke when the withdrawal limit is a fraction of a down payment in any major city. You're being given tools that were designed for a world that no longer exists. The visceral frustration of doing everything right, maxing out your accounts, staying out of debt, and still being behind someone who just bought early is soul-crushing. It's a race where you're running on sand and others are on a paved highway. You start to resent the very concept of saving because the currency is being devalued faster than you can accumulate it. The Canadian dollar is losing its home buying power at an alarming rate, and the CRA is still there to take its cut of your gains.
The shadow fact of the 40-year mortgage is the next horror story. As prices remain high and rates stay elevated, the only way to make monthly payments affordable is to stretch the debt out over 4 decades. You will be paying for your home until you are 75 years old. You won't own the home. The bank will own you. This is the death of retirement. The emotional pain of realizing you will never truly be free of debt is the new Canadian norm. We are becoming a society of debt slaves, where every waking hour is dedicated to servicing a massive loan for a pile of wood and drywall. You feel the visceral weight of that debt every morning when you wake up. It limits your choices. You can't quit a job you hate, you can't start a business, you can't take risks. You are tethered to the machine. The Canadian dream has been replaced by Canadian servitude. But there is a group that profits from this, the Big Five banks. They are reporting record profits, while you are reporting record stress. It's a zero-sum game, and you're on the losing side.
The shadow fact of small-town Canada is that it's no longer an escape. It used to be that if you couldn't afford Toronto, you moved to Guelph. If you couldn't afford Guelph, you moved to London. If you couldn't afford London, you moved to Windsor. But the work-from-home revolution and the desperate search for yield have pushed prices up in every corner of the country. Even affordable towns now have million-dollar listings. There is no elsewhere left. The visceral pain of being priced out of your own hometown, the place where your family has lived for generations, is a special kind of grief. You are a housing refugee in your own province. You see the local shops being replaced by chain stores because the locals can no longer afford to live there, and the new residents are just equity refugees from the GTA. The social fabric of rural Canada is being shredded by the same forces destroying the cities. It's a homogenization of struggle. No matter where you go in the Great White North, the for sale sign is a middle finger to your aspirations. But what happens to a society when the hope for a better life is systematically removed? The mental health toll is the shadow fact that won't show up in the GDP. There is a specific kind of housing trauma that comes from being outbid for the 10th time. You stop looking, you stop caring, you enter a state of learned helplessness. This is the visceral reality for hundreds of thousands of young Canadians. They are giving up, not because they are lazy, but because they are exhausted. The constant hustle culture advice to get a side gig or sell your blood is an insult to their dignity. The emotional pain of feeling like a failure as a provider or as an adult is driving a surge in anxiety and depression. We are a nation on the edge of a collective nervous breakdown, and the remedy being offered is more debt. The Canadian dream has become a Canadian nightmare that you can't wake up from because you can't afford the bed. And yet, the bidding wars continue. Who are these people still bidding? The shadow fact of the bidding war is that it's often a theater of the absurd. Real estate agents, incentivized by higher commissions, fuel the FOMO, fear of missing out.
They tell you this is the last chance and prices only go up. You are pressured into making the biggest financial decision of your life in 15 minutes after a 10-minute walkthrough. You waive the inspection. You buy a money pit because you're terrified of being left behind forever. The visceral regret that follows, the buyer's remorse, when the furnace breaks and the roof leaks and you have $0 left in your emergency fund, is a silent epidemic. We are building a nation of house-poor individuals who are one missed paycheck away from total ruin. The stability of homeownership is a myth when you're leveraged to the hilt. You're not a homeowner, you're a caretaker for the bank's asset, and you're paying for the privilege of doing the maintenance. The shadow fact is that many owners are actually worse off than renters, but the social stigma of renting keeps the charade going.
The shadow fact of the Loblaws effect goes deeper than just groceries. It's about the oligopoly trap. Canada is a country of 3 companies in a trench coat: telecom, groceries, banking. Each one is squeezing your disposable income, making the down payment goal even more unreachable. You feel the visceral anger when you see Galen Weston's face while you're deciding which bill to skip this month. This Canadian squeeze is unique. Our cost of living is rising faster than our peers, but outside activity is flatlining. Why innovate when you can just buy a house and wait for it to appreciate? Our best minds aren't starting the next Apple or Tesla. They're becoming real estate agents or mortgage brokers because that's where the money is. We are cannibalizing our future to pay for our present housing costs. This is the visceral reality of a rent-seeker economy. It's a slow-motion suicide of the national spirit. But is there a way out? Or are we destined to become a cold version of a feudal state?
The shadow fact of the Great Canadian Reset is that it might be permanent. We are moving toward a European model of generational renting, but without the European protections or the European transit. We are being asked to accept a lower standard of living than our parents for more work. The emotional pain of this downward mobility is the defining characteristic of Gen Z and millennials in Canada. You were told you were special and that education is the key, only to find out the key doesn't fit the lock of a front door. The visceral feeling of being lied to by the system creates a deep-seated distrust of institutions. You don't trust the banks, you don't trust the government, and you don't trust the future. This trust deficit is the real crisis. Without trust, a society falls apart. We see it in the rising polarization and the us versus them mentality. The haves and the have-nots are no longer just economic categories. They are 2 different Canadas that no longer speak the same language. One Canada is worried about capital gains taxes. The other is worried about the price of eggs.
The shadow fact that no politician will admit is that they are also the landlords. A significant percentage of MPs in Ottawa own investment properties. They are literally the people profiting from the crisis they are tasked with solving. This is the ultimate betrayal. The visceral realization that the fix will never come because the fixers are getting rich is the final blow to your hope. They offer first-time homebuyer incentives that just push prices up further, acting as a subsidy for sellers. It's a shadow fact of performative policy. They want to look like they're helping while ensuring their own net worth stays protected. You are the collateral damage of their success. The emotional pain of this realization is what leads to the giving up. It's not a lack of ambition. It's a rational response to a rigged game. You've decided to stop playing. You've decided to find a new dream, even if it's outside the borders of the country you love. But what does that new dream look like?
So here we are at the end of the Canadian dream as we knew it. But maybe, just maybe, giving up on owning a home is the first step toward a different kind of freedom. The shadow fact of the future is that your value as a human is not tied to a mortgage or a piece of land. The visceral pain you feel is real, but it's also a catalyst. If the system is broken, stop trying to fix your life within its broken rules. Build something else. Invest in yourself, in your skills, in your community. Things the CRA and the banks can't easily tax or take away. The new Canadian dream isn't a house, it's resilience. It's finding a way to thrive despite the oligopolies and the interest rates. It might mean leaving the city, leaving the province, or redefining what success looks like. The white picket fence is a relic of the 20th century. The 21st century Canadian dream is about agility, community, and the courage to call out the shadow facts until they can no longer be ignored. You are not a failure. The system failed you. And once you realize that, you're finally free to start building a future that actually belongs to you. The question is, what will